One of the most highly anticipated and highly viewed GSL groups ever, the round of 8 matches between IdrA and Jinro have been exciting. For those of you who don't know, this has been one of those great moments where everyone stays up late to watch the GSL, and holy mother of God, IdrA SIX pooling. If you don't know what a 6 pool is, it's like the classic I've played one game of Starcraft and a bunch of lings run in my base and I die. This is a Zerg rush, and holy crap, Jinro's building his supply depot in his main and not at his wall. So this is literally as cheesy as it gets. This is like if you first start playing Starcraft and like don't know what to do, this is like what a lot of us, including myself, did for like the first couple days we had the game. You don't make anything at the beginning of the game. You make a spawning pool as soon as you can, and when the pool finishes, you make lings. It is the fastest rush in StarCraft. It is like the quintessential like ling rush. Like, oh, what's like a Zerg rush? It's this. It's when like you're sitting there as Terran or Protoss and you don't even have your dick out yet, and lings run in your base. Oh, it looks like another barracks here will occur on the high ground, so this is good for Jinro. And holy shit, IdrA's bringing his fucking drones. He is completely all in. And oh my god, Jinro checked the tower, so he knows this is coming. Oh no, he doesn't see! Okay, now he sees one drone, but that could be a scouting drone. And oh shit, he saw lings, so now he knows. So this is incredibly exciting as lings are going to run in here. IdrA has nothing mining. He has to kill him with this push. He knows that he can't beat Jinro on the map that is perfect for Jinro, and he wants to sort of sit on the production here and make sure Marine can't get out. As IdrA is completely all in. This is completely against everything you would ever think about IdrA doing. The methodical American macro machine who always macros brings out the cheese here because of map imbalance, and the first Marine's going to come out, and IdrA doesn't surround it, and a bunker is being built behind the mineral line. Jinro's trying to get the Marine back. The Marine's low. The lings are chasing it. This is the game. It's 5 HP, and it gets into the bunker. No! And at this point, Jinro can't lose unless he fucks up his micro here and loses the Marine. Oh my god, it's running away, and it barely gets in again because IdrA can camp the production. Holy shit. Literally 5 HP because IdrA can camp the production and snipe a second Marine that comes out. As long as Jinro doesn't lose, as long as he doesn't lose the Marine. Oh my god, it's running back. It's being protected by the SCV's incredible early game micro as another bunker finishes. And IdrA has to tap out, and that's curtains for the macro machine. Jinro's like, holy shit. I'm the Gorilla Terran, I just won that. And you lose a macro game like he did in game 1, and fucking 10 minutes later it's over. You have the Metalopolis game that ends in an instant, and you have the Jungle Basin game that ends in an instant. And then the macro game where you get close positions and you see the sardonic IdrA Fields eyebrow raised there. And for those unaware, this would be the last GSL Code S game IdrA would ever fucking play. After this, he would move back to America after years in Korea as MC. Goes in to hammer it out with Jinro there. They were both on OGS and were good friends. So I want to talk about a few things here with this game. Not only is it IdrA's last GSL game and the finale of the Gregathon, this was an exciting confluence of events where we saw the two foreigners go head to head. After this, Jinro would go on to play Marine King Prime in the round of 4 and get cheesed in every game and lose as he tried to macro. A couple of them were really close. I mean, he had to play on steps for Christ's sake against MKP. This series meant so much to me within the context of StarCraft 2 history, and for me specifically, I wanted to see this VOD for years. And basically, if you don't know, GOM TV paywalled their VODs for years and then didn't upload like over half of them afterwards. So a lot of VODs were lost in history. And this video was uploaded like 10 months ago by this guy named like Starcraft VODs. And I'm going to link his channel just so you guys can show him some love and find these old GSL games. But as like weird and neurotic as it sounds, I wanted to see and cover this game specifically. This match between IdrA and Jinro was one of the most important matches in StarCraft 2 history. It was one of the most hyped and anticipated matchups at the time. And if we look at the fact that no foreigner has ever won a GSL, and the only guys to make it to round of 4 are Jinro and Neeb, it makes this series mean everything. So a couple other things that I want to cover in this series is that I've asked Jinro some questions about this on Twitter. There was some controversy in Game 5, or Game 4 rather, about like could he hear the crowd? Because like when IdrA SIX pooled, the Korean commentators were going crazy, the crowd was excited. There was like some controversy, like, oh, maybe Jinro could hear the audience and he knew the 6 pool was coming. I've asked him about this on Twitter, said he couldn't. He could not hear the audience. He opened in the same way that he like always did on Jungle Basin and was planning on doing, and the crowd, he couldn't hear him. So that rumor's been debunked. I asked him about the Manor Mule on the Shakura's Plateau game. He said it was an accident and it was supposed to be a scan. Finally, and most importantly, I asked him about like the implications of the Jungle Basin game, and this was crazy to me when I read this. Jinro said that he was very not only happy, which you would expect to win the Jungle Basin game, but he was relieved, and because I quote, IdrA was always sick on Lost Temple and I was scared of his Lost Temple. Which, if you don't know, Lost Temple is one of the most Terran favored maps versus Zerg ever. There's a high ground right over the fucking natural where you could drop tanks and Thoras. So you have to be such an incredible Gosu, Bonjour level player for a really good Terran player like Jinro to say like, yeah, that Zerg player, I was worried about playing him on Lost Temple. If some guy's being an asshole to me in 2v2 and they say, hey, do you want a 1v1 and they're Zerg and I want to fuck with them, I'll put it on Lost Temple. Because you drop tanks and Thoras on that high ground, man, it is nearly impossible to win. You've got rocks on the gold and corner island bases. It's a Terran paradise. So for Jinro, who was so good on maps like that, to say like, yeah, thank God I won that Jungle Basin game. I didn't want to face him on Lost Temple. That's crazy. And I just want to give a big shout out to IdrA and Jinro. Jinro, a really cool guy, and I really appreciate him answering those questions for me. So similar to other series I've Marine King, getting ready to play Nada, we're going to watch an interesting little video here.
Hey everyone, I am Artosis,
and it's sped up.
We do have the one, the only, the Gregathon in his leather bracket. It is IdrA from the team Evil Geniuses. And
this is an interview that happened right after, and he's just going to talk about why he left so early and stuff. I've rewatched this interview a shit ton, but it's like sort of the intellectual cap to this series. Good luck.
And we're going to go ahead and talk about a lot of stuff. Mainly though, GSL. Let's start off with early on this season, the first season of Code S. You had the most exciting group that we have ever seen. Jinro was in it, and Snare was in it, and Czech was in it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that group and how that went?
Well, honestly, I didn't expect to do really well. The map pool was about as bad as it could get, given that me and Czech both vetoed Delta and Steps. So it's like I got Jungle Basin twice. I could have had Lost Temple. It had Xel'Naga, I think, but Xel'Naga's not actually that good because of the natural setup. And then 2 Terrans. So it's like, I really didn't like the maps at all. And Jinro beat me. Jungle Basin is perfect for his style. He plays defensive macro, and it's just like if you take the 3rd base, you can control the map so easily and never be exposed or vulnerable or anything. So yeah, that map went about as I expected.
Perfect for Jinro.
Then I got Ensnare on Xel'Naga, which, while not great, was the best CVT map in the group, so I was okay with that. Oh, he did a Reactor Hellion rush. I recognized it because it was like the gas before barracks, really, really fast Reactor Hellion. So I just put down a Roach Horn right away. I knew the build, I'd experienced it before. Defended it easily. And then I figured he would do that tank.
Noticing gas timings were some of the only ways for Zerg to scout in this time. So it's crazy, because that was some of the only times you could get your Overlords to get vision, was having them camped outside the natural where the other player couldn't see them and you could see when they took their gases. That would be a big way where Zergs would determine whether or not the Protoss was all-inning or not, would be their 3rd and 4th gas timing.
Tank Marine follow, just because that's really popular among OGS players. Like, Top does it every single TVZ. So I had a good read on him. I countered it. That put me in a big lead for the macro game. I just kind of closed it out really, really slowly because it's easy to defend on Xel'Naga. And then the last game, I was actually all because of Rhett. Like, I played Rhett, I don't know, like 50 or 60 CVZs over the 3 nights before his match for Cezanne, and Jungle Basin was one of the maps for that. So it's just we developed that build, like the Drone Scout fast expansion. If you know your opponent has a penchant for banelings, and I know Czech does, that's great, because just the roaches defend everything, you always end up in economic advantage. The only thing that's kind of iffy versus is speed, like, and expand builds, but so I figured Czech would go banelings, and he did. He ended up canceling it, so I had a big advantage there, and my macro's better than his anyway, so it was easy to close out.
Classic.
Now, it seemed like the first match was actually going to be more important than it turned out to be. It seemed like, you know, you were going to go ahead and face these other pretty strong opponents in some kind of volatile matchups after the loss to Jinro. Did you ever think that you wouldn't actually make it through after that loss against Jinro?
Oh, sure. Like I said, I wasn't very confident going in to begin with. Then losing the first map, that obviously doesn't help. But it didn't really like rock me mentally or anything, because like I said, Jungle Basin's a really, really good map for him. I knew I was going to play him on it, so I had to prepare for it, and the preparation didn't go well. So I knew there was a really good chance I could lose that. So yeah, obviously it's not good, but it wasn't unexpected, so it didn't mess me up.
Now, your second group. This group was actually pretty amazing, a totally stacked group. The BlizzCon World Champion Genius. We had Nada in it. Obviously, it's Nada, a Bonjour, one of the best players in the world in StarCraft 2 easily. And, of course, Clyde, the greatest StarCraft 2 player ever to have existed. No, all jokes aside, Clyde.
It's, for those who don't know, there was this big inside joke where TSL Clyde was like a favorite of Tastosis, sort of like Nestea, how they're like, Nestea's the king of the world and all this stuff. They had a similar bit with TSL Clyde, where Clyde looked really good for the first like 3 GSLs and never really like transitioned and found his form into the next era. But every time they would cast Clyde, they would hype him up and like jokingly dick ride him.
Actually a very good Terran. Tell us a little bit about this group and wow with the result.
Yeah, again, I didn't really expect to make it through. I don't know, it's just I haven't been playing very well. I don't think Zerg is any good at all right now. I've been losing like every game I played in practice. I was actually practicing less than I normally do, just because whenever I played, I'd get really frustrated, and I thought that was hurting my chances more than the lack of practice would. And so I was like, I just went in, play my games, be done with it. And then Clyde, I kind of figured...
Think about how bad that is. This is a guy who stuck it out harder and longer than any other non-Korean in Brood War. He's literally getting his head caved in by B-teamers in like the IdrA Pro House in Brood War, like playing 10 hours a day and then more. And that, like, this is a guy who is so adept at practicing and so committed, and like the game was so fucked up and imbalanced and frustrating. The most committed guy was like, I think I won't practice. That's how bad it was.
Figured he would do the Marauder Hellion all-in, or at least a Marauder Hellion rush, just because I always go roaches on there in televised games, which was just kind of a coincidence, but it had always happened, I was aware of it. So I knew that could happen. I saw his Hellions, I defended with Spine Crawlers. I got Mutas out just in time, kind of because I figured he was doing that rush, and just controlled the game with Mutas from there. His rush was really, really risky. If that kind of thing doesn't work out, it puts Zerg in a really good spot.
So this is what we talked about earlier, where I was like, he showed roach builds on that map, but then in the game against Clyde, he went double Spine, which is better against Marauder Hellion. And then against Jinro, Jinro did a build that beat what he did against Clyde with the double Spine, and he went back to roaches. Crazy.
Spot. So yeah.
A good example of like that would happen in GSL, but not in like an MLG Dallas, where you're just doing like your standard games, your standard builds. This is the sort of thing that you would only think about and do when you have time to prepare for your opponents, which is what makes GSL so great. Best tournament.
I was a little lucky there, but I read him well. Then the next game against Genius, I think Genius has some stage fright, honestly. He doesn't look like he plays as well on stage in big matches as he does in the ladder. He has some really questionable decision-making, really risky. In the first game when he lost to that random terrible player just because he did the same greedy build both games. So yeah, he scattered my expansion and immediately thought, okay, I can make a bunch of probes now. And then 6 roaches waltz in and he has 1 cannon. So
yes, thank you.
I didn't expect to beat him at all, especially. So and he gifted the game to me. It doesn't really mean that much. And then against Nada, honestly, I don't know. He could have. There's a possibility he threw the game. I think it would have made it easier for MC to like avoid a team kill and avoid playing each other, and allow MC to get himself versus Zerg, which would be good for him. So I don't really know if that was like intentionally lost or not, but he just kind of did an all-in, and my Baneling's got his SCV, so he couldn't repair the Thors, and that's kind of the crux of the build. So once that's gone, it falls apart, and that's what happened.
Now, obviously, you didn't expect to 3-0 this group, and probably didn't expect to actually...
So when he says throw the game, what he means is like they were both going to advance from the group, but if IdrA advanced first from the group, the seeding was so where MC, who was also on OGS and friends and teammates with Nada, were like IdrA's first seed, and MC was second seed. So like if IdrA goes out first seed, then like they won't have to team kill, but like he's just being modest. Like Nada didn't like lose, so he didn't have to play fucking MC. And if he did, he got monster moded by Marine King, so it didn't matter, lol.
Even make it into the top 8.
By the way, like seeing Marine King just like rip through Jinro and Nada back to back like 7-0, just doing like the dumbest all ends, was like a perfect representation of like where the meta was at and what sort of playstyle was rewarded at the time.
Did you really feel after that? And I mean, that's actually a really great accomplishment. That's the furthest you've gotten in the GSL thus far.
Yeah, actually, barring season 3, every time I've gotten 1 round further, so maybe in 3 seasons. No, it was awesome. Like, there's nothing better than a win that you don't expect. Like, and it's been a while since I've had one of those. Usually, I expect to win, or it's a game against like MVP on terrible maps where I knew there was a good shot I'd lose. But here, I thought I'd lose, and then I won, and that's a lot more satisfying than anything else. So that was really great.
Right, and then of course there was the fateful match against Jinro. I know that's still very fresh in your mind, and I won't really bug you about it right now. We'll try to get him later on that, but I do want to ask just one question. I'm sure everyone wants to know the answer. I try to explain it a little bit to them what I think it is, but the game on Metalopolis where you just left right away against Jinro, what was your thought process there?
People, when I stream, I leave pretty quickly when I know I've lost too, and I get a lot of flack for that. It's not like not caring about the game or getting frustrated or anything like that. It's just really, really easy for Zerg to get into an unwinnable situation. It's not a comeback race. You don't make things happen. If your macro is twice as good as your opponent, then yeah, you can have a comeback by just like cutting it perfectly and eking out more units than them just by being better. But Jinro's a solid player. He had a huge advantage. I wasn't going to come back from that. And in that situation specifically, people don't realize how big it actually is. Like, you have to go up to either roaches or banelings in order to break out, and then you're sitting there on one base with hatch check, without a lot of drones, and roaches and banelings are both really, really easy to nullify defensively. So it's like you've invested all of this into these now useless units, your economy is way behind, your tech is way behind, and on top of all that, it was close to position to Metalopolis. It was an unwinnable situation. It wasn't worth it to play it out.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's talk about who's left in the GSL. We have Nesty versus MVP, and then Jinro against Marine King. What do you think about this Final Four? Who do you see moving on in both groups, and who do you think is going to take down this season?
MVP is going to destroy it. I don't see him losing another game in the tournament unless Marine King gets lucky. I think Marine King will beat Jinro. I don't know. He's just... Jinro's early game is his weakness. Marine King's really aggressive. He comes up with really abusive builds. I think he'll win that.
So how did it end up? IdrA was right. MVP blitzed through the whole tournament. He 3-0'd Trickster. Nesty took a game off of him, and then he destroyed Marine King in the finals.
Though Jinro's probably the more deserving player. MVP.
Oh, and Jinro took a game off of Marine King. Marine King didn't 7-0. He's 7-1 to Kappa, or 6-1.
Going to 4-0, 3-0 or 4-0, whichever. He's going to destroy Nesty. Nesty's not bad. Nesty's actually very good, but Nesty's had a lucky run so far. No Zerg deserves to be in the round of 4 right now. It's just like Zerg shouldn't be winning. And Nesty finally got a good opponent, and he's going to get destroyed. He says he's going to get destroyed, and I think that kind of says it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that, but he is a great Zerg. Maybe he can make it. What about next season? No. What about next season in Codes? What do you see happening with yourself and with other Zergs as well?
Well, we got two Zergs who people actually don't realize how bad. We have two Zergs who earned their way into the round of 16 this time. Me and Nesty. We both had relatively easy groups. His only challenge was Maka, who played poorly that game. I got a group with Check and Snare earned his way into the Codes like early on and hasn't been performing as well since. Check is not a macro Zerg, and I got to play him in a macro game. Zenio got through on ZVZs and lost to the Terran in his group. It's just like, yeah. And then I kept going, honestly, with lucky games. Like Genius built one cannon. I should have lost to him. Nada did that kind of funky all-in. Clyde did his build, and I read it, but it wasn't really an example of balance. Nesty has actually had the easiest path I have ever seen. Like, not to take anything away from him. He's a really good player, but he got Polt Prime, who was nothing special. Maka, who played poorly. And that was both on Blistering, which is...
I fucking love when you get to hear, like, old, like, whenever someone talks about someone and then they go on to, like, become great. Like, Polt Prime, who's nothing special. Polt Prime was the guy who, like, retired IdrA and would go on to win a shitload of foreigner tournaments. And essentially was the reason that WCS, the initial rollout, didn't work. Because Polt Polt played in WCS America and won it monotonously like every fucking season. But it's just funny to hear like IdrA like, oh, Polt Prime, nothing special, and then like we think about Polt now and it's like Polt was really good for years and years. And one of the most famous games IdrA ever played was in the first like WCS America season, where he played against Polt and played like a perfect game on Daybreak, and Polt played perfectly against him, and then they had like a big engagement, and IdrA left with the huge bank, and then like tilted off the rest of the fucking series. But that's fucking funny. Polt Prime, who's nothing special.
It was a pretty decent ZVT map. And then he got a ZVZ against Zenio. She won. And then he got the game against Boxer, where he won it by 1 second. Like, if that barracks lands, Boxer wins, because he had some Marine timing where, like, your one hash reduction gives you a weak point. The Marines come in, they kill you. There's nothing you can do about it. He said himself he didn't know how he would have won if he hadn't gotten in. And then he got Choya, who didn't deserve to be Codes in the first place, and he 3-0'd him. And now he's going to get destroyed by MVP. It's like, Zerg is only winning by getting absolutely lucky right now. And it's just going to get worse, because Protoss are now going to spend 2 weeks figuring out these new air builds. And air builds were already really good against Zerg, and they're about to get a ton better. So I could actually see 0 Zergs making the round of 16. I would not be...
Like everything he said, except 0 Zergs making the round of 16, was true. Like, and I've been harping on it this whole series. Like, Zerg does have to get lucky. The meta of Protoss players looking at air, that did happen. Like Phoenix builds, like the 4 Phoenix openers, and then the Void Ray openers became ridiculously popular. Like, he was right about that. He was right about the Zergs having to get lucky. He was right about what happened in the tournament. He was right about the other players in the tournament. It reminds me of that classic State of the Game clip where he goes, Zerg cannot scout, and he like gives all the reasoning, and it's like him and an argument between IdrA and Day9, and then like the host JP McDaniel like interrupts and he's like, Day 9, your brother Tasteless wants to come on. He says IdrA's right. And he was. And you have people that hate on IdrA, and he's a real polarizing guy, obviously. You kind of either love him or hate him. And we could honestly use more people like that in the scene, but the crux of the issue here and with this whole series is IdrA was right. He was right about the map imbalance. He was right about close positions. He was right about the neutral depot, the roaches needing more range, Zerg not being able to scout. Pretty much everything he said about fucking players, the Pulp Prime, nothing special, lol. But like when it came down to the meta and like what needed to be done, he was right. And like in terms of the predictions that he made about the meta, and how 2011 literally was known as GOM TVT. Like GSL was on the website GOM TV. It was nicknamed GOM TVT because 2011 was so insanely dominated by Terrans. When was this fucking filmed? Like February 10th of 2011. That whole era, Terran Fest. Zerg struggled through that whole era. Wasn't until the Queen patch in mid 2012 where we sort of saw the shift back to it being Zerg favored, and that sort of changed the game forever with Zerg just being more stable. A hallmark of these IdrA games was him being really unstable early in the game, guessing or getting lucky with the defense, and that having to occur for him to like get into the mid game and show his skill and win. What happened against Jinro? He got close positions twice and then had to play the bad maps. Things stopped going his way. He stopped getting the breaks. Did Jinro play really well? Yeah. Like, did Jinro deserve to win? Sure. But if we look at how the series played out and all of the games in the Gregathon and the GSL that IdrA played, it's like there is a remarkably high amount of like dumb bullshit happening that results in him losing. And that wasn't specific to IdrA, that was a problem that happened to Zergs a lot. And I think this Gregathon like really represented that well and showed how hard it was to play Zerg back in this era. So if you weren't aware, IdrA after this goes back to America and he's just pretty much playing in like the MLGs and stuff. And he like goes and plays in Code S one time or Code A one time after this. I'm like plays like perfectly both games against this dime a dozen toss named Avenge, and Avenge goes like Immortal Sentry both games and just wins because of force field. But other than that, IdrA never plays in another GSL game, and that's not even Code S, so I didn't count it. But make sure you leave a like. That's been the Gregathon. I hope you guys enjoyed that. IdrA Fields doing it big for America. Never won one, but you can see why if you watch the whole series.